Hello, Chaz here, and welcome to the Stanley Parable. This is a Half-Life 2 mod, and a couple of people have requested this from me, and I quite like it. It's a good mod. I've played through it before, I've seen all the endings, but I won't spoil anything. I'll just let you guys see it for yourselves. And I'll try not to talk over the narrator either, because the narrator is awesome. So without further ado, let's get started.
This is the story of a man named Stanley. Stanley worked for a company in a big building where he was employee number 427. Employee number 427's job was simple. He sat at his desk in room 427 and he pushed buttons on a keyboard. Orders came to him through a monitor next to his desk, telling him what buttons to push, how long to push them, and in what order. This is what employee 427 did every day of every month of every year. And although others might have considered it soul-rending, Stanley relished every moment that the orders came in, as though he had been made exactly for this job. And Stanley was happy. And then one day something very peculiar happened. Something that would forever change Stanley. Something he would never quite forget. He had been at his desk for nearly an hour when he realized that not one single order had arrived on a monitor for him to follow. No one had showed up to give him instructions, call a meeting, or even say hi. Never in all his years at the company had this happened, this complete isolation. Something was very clearly wrong. Shocked, frozen solid, Stanley found himself unable to move for the longest time. But as he came to his wits and regained his senses, he got up from his desk and walked out into the hallway.
Okay, so the basic idea of this game is that you will be given two choices at various points in the game. And you can choose to do what the narrator says, or you can just completely defy him and see what he has to say about that. So for this one, I'll do the first ending I got when I first played this game.
Stanley decided to go to the staff lounge to check on his co-workers. He never functioned well by himself and constantly needed support and guidance from others, so the thought of total solitude was terrifying to him. When Stanley came to a set of two open doors, he entered the door on his left.
No, I think I'll do the one on my right.
This was not the correct way to the employee lounge, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. So he turned left at the first open door and walked back in the right direction.
Nah.
Stanley was so bad at following directions, it's incredible he wasn't fired years ago. Maybe this is why everyone had left. No one wanted to be around someone as bad at listening as him. And since he was walking into the middle of nowhere and thus ruining the entire story, Stanley decided that he would punish himself. So when he came to the elevator and the doors opened, he stepped inside and pushed the button to go up.
No way. I'm not punishing myself just because I decided to exercise free will.
Oh, Stanley. You know, you really aren't going anywhere, and I don't say that deceitfully. I truthfully mean that there isn't a story down here. The story was back up where I told you to go in the first place. Right now, you're just running around looking at empty halls, and frankly, that's perhaps even more infuriating for me. So why don't you throw me a bone, give me a chance, and just let me tell the story I want to tell,
I suppose you got a point. I don't really want to upset you too much, so I guess I'll play along from this point on.
Now listen carefully. This is important. Stanley walked through the red door.
Okay. Let's do this then.
Good, good. Now, if you don't mind, there's something I'd like to show you. But to do that, I think it would be best for us to start from the beginning. This is a very sad story about the death of a man named Stanley.
About the what?
Stanley worked for a company in a big building where he was employee number 427. His job pushing buttons demanded little of him, so there was not much of himself to give, and in this way Stanley's job felt less and less like his every day. But if buttons need pushing one day, it means they'll need pushing the next and then the next. So without question or judgment, Stanley continued to do what the screen told him. One keystroke flowed into another keystroke, flowed into his ride home, flowed into dinner, flowed into waking up, flowed into going to work, and here he was again. Stanley was typing out a complete sentence that said absolutely nothing at all. If in reality no one ever actually disappeared from the office, and Stanley never got the opportunity to make a decision, to choose which path he wanted to take, would his life still have any meaning? Perhaps when we long for something deeply enough, these hopes and fantasies become so strong in our minds that we truly believe that we're there, controlling that person and living that adventure. To manipulate your own thoughts and emotions might mean freedom from a self-imposed prison, but these delusions can be fatal to those who can't tell the difference. And so, Stanley asked, if that door never opened, if I'll never be able to walk away from those people and from these buttons, is this life still worth experiencing? Am I actually happy? Stanley answered this question by pushing a button. Then he pushed a button, and then he pushed a button. Then he pushed a button. Then he pushed a button.
Okay, so that's the first of the endings. There's 6 endings in total. I'll do 3 this video and 3 in another video. So let's go ahead and do the next one. This time around I'll just skip the intros since you've already seen that. Okay, so let's see what happens if I play along the entire way.
Stanley decided to go to the staff lounge to check on his co-workers. He never functioned well by himself and constantly needed support and guidance from others, so the thought of total solitude was terrifying to him. When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Oh, by the way, I'll show you what happens if you go through the door this way. Yeah, like through the door to the left.
This was not the correct way to the employee lounge, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. So he turned left at the first open door and walked back in the right direction. And like that, he was back on track.
And that's what happens. If you were ever curious about whether you could actually get back on track that way.
As Stanley entered the lounge, he was horrified to find not a single person here. He decided he would walk up to see his boss, hoping that he would find an answer there. Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Upstairs, okay.
Entering his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. It was at this point that he began to feel dizzy and a little sick, and even thought he might pass out when suddenly he noticed a keypad next to the filing cabinet in the corner of his boss's office. Stanley had never seen this panel before and had no idea what combination of numbers would produce any result. In fact, only Stanley's boss knew this, since the panel withheld access to the boss's greatest, darkest secret, and so he had assigned the keypad a combination that only he could possibly know: the number of his freshman dorm number in college, 1957. But of course, Stanley couldn't possibly have known this.
Yeah, there's no way I could have known that. So, you know, I'll just kind of sit here.
Stanley just sat around twiddling his thumbs. Trying to input anything on the keypad was useless, since he could never possibly know that the combination was 1957.
Yep, no way I could know that. No siree.
One, 9, 5, 7.
Well, fine, if you're going to be that pushy about it, might as well. 1, 9, 5, 7.
Yet incredibly, by simply pushing random buttons on the keypad, Stanley happened to input the correct code by sheer luck. Amazing. Stanley ventured forth into the newly opened passageway.
I've never had somebody railroad as much as this guy has.
As he drew deeper into the bowels of the building, Stanley had no idea where he was or what this place held. And just as he began to think he might not discover a thing, he emerged into a long room to find rows and rows of monitors. Screens with a number above it. Stanley noticed, however, that these were not random numbers, but the number of employees who worked in the building, his co-workers. Even his own number, 427, had a place on the wall. But why a setup so elaborate, he asked. Was this simple surveillance, or something even more? And as if in answer to his question, the wall slid open before him, revealing the ultimate truth of the situation. An enormous control panel, Stanley discovered, but not one that controlled simple machinery. Buttons were labeled with emotions. Happy, sad. Levers and knobs controlled actions. Walking, eating, doing work, or watching TV. Every input on this device monitored not the functions of a machine, but of a human being. And the reality began to sink in. Stanley, like so many other people, reduced to images on a monitor, had been under someone's control, always at the mercy of this machine. Could this have been the only reason employee number 427 was content with his boring job? That a machine had altered his emotions to accept it blindly? He began to feel an unbridled rage, and at the peak of his anger, something happened. A spark. Stanley looked up and saw the generator overhead, still providing some small amount of power to the machine, keeping it alive. And knowing that this generator was all that kept the controls running, Stanley moved to the ladder in the back of the room and began to climb towards the rafters. The higher Stanley climbed, the closer he felt to freedom, the further from enslavement.
Okay, so you'll see I've got two choices here. I could engage the generator, or I could disable it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save here, just because, you know, to save time, otherwise I'm going to have to, you know, walk the whole way through this again. And I'll disable it first.
Blackness, power gone, all alone, and then...
Okay, how about that?
As he stepped through the door, into the fresh outside air, a feeling of liberation rushed through Stanley's body. He had seen power, he had seen enslavement, and he had destroyed it. The underling was in control now. He had found his leading role. Stanley never discovered why everyone had gone missing, nor how and when he had come under the machine's control. But it didn't upset him terribly, because he knew that this was how things were meant to happen. All he felt was a delight unlike any he had ever known before. Never again would he follow someone else's orders without question. Never again would anyone tell Stanley where to go, what to do, or how to feel. No more bosses, no more instructions on a screen. Stanley decides for himself now. and he stepped out into the world, and he felt the cool breeze upon his skin, and Stanley was happy.
That seems a little bit fishy to me. It's maybe just me, but you know, didn't we just say that we'd deactivated what, the machine that told us what emotions we would feel? You know, just thinking about that. I don't know. However, that's the supposedly good ending to the Stanley Parable. Sorry, I got a little bit of a phlegmy throat just now. And after these credits run, I shall load up and show you what happens if you activate the generator. Thank you for making this video game. It was a very good one. Okay. Ah, that sucks. Not let me load it. Oh well. I'll just, edit this out. Okay, so I'm back in this room, and my voice might be a little bit louder because I've just adjusted the microphone volume. And we're gonna see what happens if I activate
the higher
generator.
Stanley climbed, the closer he felt to freedom, the further from enslavement.
Alright, let's crank this thing up. Ding!
Oh, Stanley.
What?
You didn't just activate the controls, did you?
I did.
After it kept you enslaved all these years, you go and you try to take control of the machine for yourself? Is that what you wanted? Control? Stanley. Stanley. I applaud your effort, I really do. But you need to understand, there's only so much that machine can do. You were meant to let it go, turn the controls off and leave. If you want to throw my story off track, you're going to have to do better than that. I'm afraid you don't have nearly the power you think you have. For example, and I believe you'll find this pertinent, Stanley suddenly realized that he had just initiated the network's emergency detonation system.
The what?
In the event that this machine is activated without proper DNA identification, nuclear detonators are set to explode, eliminating the entire complex. How
Shit.
long until detonation then? Oh, let's make it say, 2 minutes.
Oh dear.
Now, this is making things a little more fun, isn't it, Stanley? Go ahead, play with those controls all you like. The real controls are where I'm sitting. Did you really ever believe you held any power? Did you not think I knew what I was doing? When I erased your co-workers and turned off the machine, I was offering you freedom, an escape. I didn't have to do that. I've run this story many times, and I don't always set you free. Sometimes you just sit there, day after day after day, doing your job forever, and then dying alone. But when I actually give you the freedom to control your own actions, it's not enough. I let you go, and you trapped yourself just the same. You just weren't made to handle this sort of responsibility, I'm afraid. But you know what you were made for? Pushing buttons. You get it now? Now I'm enjoying this. Tell you what, I'll throw some extra time on the clock just because I'm having so much fun. There we go. You see, I want to watch you for every long second you try to puzzle this out. After all, it should make sense, right? The timer, the nuclear detonation, the mysterious facility, it's all here. This is a video game. Except for one thing there, hero. You've got no weapon, no vehicle. You don't even know where you're going. When you saw that timer, you just instinctively started trying to find an exit, didn't you? In fact, I bet you're still looking for a way out. I bet you're clicking on everything in this room, trying to open doors or vents or something and solve the puzzle. as though this game has a solution, as though it can be won. That timer is not a catalyst to keep things moving along. It's just seconds ticking away to your death. This is not a challenge. It's a tragedy. It's the moment when the hero realizes that despite his best efforts, he is powerless to his environment. And then he lets go. He surrenders. And he dies. 30 seconds, Stanley. 30 seconds. Until a boom, and then nothing. No ending to this story, just you dying. I suppose you could have gotten an actual ending if you played along, but that just wouldn't have been your style, would it? Instead, you'll perish knowing that the only choice you made here was to turn on that machine and to start this timer. But you won't be alone, because I'm not going anywhere. I'll be here to watch every second of your inevitable life from the time we fade in until the moment I say, happily ever after.
And that is the third of the 6 endings that you can get in the Stanley Parable. The next episode I'll be recording will have a lot more unorthodox endings, but I won't spoil any surprises, I'll just record them. So I'll see you next video.